breakaways in their 6-4 win over Chicago Sunday night. Brian Propp hands back to Samuelson, then over to Huffman. That'll be very interesting to see how the Soviets set up, not only defensively, but what they do offensively. Because there is a history that they have that Andy Murray, the assistant coach of the Flyers, had worked on looking at tape back through the years, and there were still some constants that seemed to be typical of Soviet play. We'll see if those develop tonight. Brian Propp is wedged off by Homutov, and this one is sent all the way back down. Vladimir Malakov to play on defense. Just underway. Glad you've joined us tonight on Sports Channel from the Spectrum in Philadelphia. These two teams are playing in the 5th game and the last game of this Soviet tour. And the tour will continue, but for pleasure spots tomorrow for the Soviets instead of games. Eklund rolls one along for Scheifele. Scheifele crosses sticks with Kravchuk there. And then Eklund leans into his man, and down it goes, but pinching is Berube. Took a get hit from Shuryayev. Berube trying to kick it along. Biakin is able to take it loose, but then lost over to Kartner. Terry Kartner pivoting from Biakin's checking. Here's Kartner leaned on by Kravchuk. Throws one in front, save, rebound, and another save by Mihailovsky. And the Soviets wheel back out. This is Kamensky. Eyed up on the play by Chikrin. A drive by Biakin went to the glass. Berube steps into play. Stripped, though, of the puck by Fedorov, and he threw it wide. Mellenby with a crisp pass to Poulin. Berube couldn't get this one, but will head to the corner with Gusarov. And a good solid hit by Berube, and the fans love that. This one sent back along for Kartner to keep alive. Dumps it back for Gusarov again. And then it is tipped on by Kartner and out.
I got a feeling we'll see Gusarov and Berube head-to-head before this game is over. One of the few guys that the Soviet team has that's really willing to stick his nose in there and stir it up consistently is Gusarov.
Well, there's a shot and a goal that came from Fedorov on a steal. Just that quickly, the first Soviet shot of the game went blistering into the Flyers' net, and the Soviets lead 1-0.
You know, Mike, over the years, one element of the North American game that the Soviets have adopted is not capitalizing on a turnover, but it's the slap shot. Terry Kartner tried a long diagonal to Dave Poulin. Fedorov was right there, pushed it ahead of him so he could catch up to it, and he wound up with a mighty slapper that really handcuffed Pete Peters. It looked like it went between his legs.
Here's Davidov coming in, and Peters made that stop, and another shot, and Peters able to close his legs on the puck, and a stoppage of play, as Davidov, the most dangerous scorer that the Soviets have had with 5 points in the prior 4 games, nearly made this game 2-0.
Here's another look at the goal that made this a 1-0 hockey game in favor of the Soviet Red Army team. Fedorov just picking up the loose puck and blasting it home, and that showed it even better. Went right between Pete Peters' legs.
Off this face-off, the Flyers bring it out, and Derek Smith steps ahead, along with Sullivan. Sullivan drops it back, and it is off Mihailovsky's stick, but then played along by Smith. Stepped into that time by Chibirev, but it is back to Acton. Acton battling with Malakov. Then Chibirev throws it around. Pinching in to kick it along was Gord Murphy. Oh, and what a freight train check by Derek Smith on Konstantinov. It is played by Davidov. Wants to get it to Konstantinov, and then a shot in front. Came across, and the Soviets can wheel back up with it. Kostichkin dipped one over on the wing to Chibirev. Chibirev leaned on by Barron, and he sent one off the back of the goal. 1-0, the Soviets ahead. 3 minutes gone, first period of play. 3 shots for the Soviets, and just the 1 shot, the first shot of the game, off a Flyers stick. Acton ahead to Doug Sullivan, and he flips it back in. You would have to look hard to find a Flyer player who has not seen competition against the Soviets. Yet back in '76, virtually none of the players, except for Bobby Clark and Bill Barber, who were in that Superseries in '72, had played Soviet teams before. Here is Sutter, sliding it across to Shel Samuelson. Then back along for an attempt to get back out by Scheifele. It's brought on by Sutter. Sutter with a drop for Horacek, and it's fed away by Kravchuk. Played by Samuelson. Slides it back across to Huffman. Shift change on for the Soviets now as Huffman reconnects with Shel Samuelson. Then that one went through Sutter and just too far for Horacek and down. Gusarov goes back, and Horacek right on him. No icing on this play as Kravchuk able to emerge with it for the Soviets, who have the 1-0 lead early in this game. We'll pick up the assist for you. Shovel shot. That time came from Vaslemikov, and Pete Peters was able to get that one. Then along for Horacek. Pinched, though, by Motkov, and the play alive, but Samuelson takes over. Tip back down, and they say no icing on this one again. In the Soviet League, there is only one assist given on any goal, and that has to come for a direct pass. There are no rebound assists. And here in the U.S., the Soviet players are accorded as many as 2 on a play, even if it's coincidental.
That's one of the reasons when you look at his scoring totals in the Soviet Union, you say, boy, these guys don't pick up the points the way guys over here do when they're offensive threats, but that's the biggest reason why they don't give 2 assists.
Gusarov able to slide it back across with 15:20 to go in the first period of this game. 1-0 in favor of Red Army. Gusarov will pivot once more. Back with Motkov. Flips one across, and here's Kamensky finessing nicely. On into the Flyer zone. Valery Kamensky on the wing, and a backhander by Holmutov went wide. Bykov trying to get to it, but instead it's taken by Konstantinov, and he's just able to toss back to Malakov. Now they have the 5 out that started the game for the Red Army. Moving in is Bykov, trying to trickle one through Chikrin. Over to take it now is Terry Kartner. 4 shots for the Red Army and 1 for the Flyers here. As ahead now comes Prop. The drop is to Shifley, then to Eklund, who shoots one, save, rebound, score! A guffaw and a tie game.
There's the guffaw. Well, one thing the Flyers knew, whether it was Irbe in goal or Mihailovsky, if they put their heads down and go for rebounds, they're going to be there. You saw that Mihailovsky went down to make a save on a real innocent shot. He didn't even have to. Eklund put it on him, but he went down to protect Lowe. That really crippled him when he went to go over to his left to stop Prop. He couldn't get there in time. Steve Shifley will get an assist on the play. Pelle Eklund will get one as well, and the Flyers have tied it on that goal.
Eklund and Shifley with the assist at 5:22, and the game is knotted. Here's Murray Barron with a pass. Went off of Poulin. And it is Kravchuk turning it along for a pass that came back out to Petrov. Petrov sealed up by the checking of Murphy, and it spun across to Murray Barron. Barron with 1 game in a Flyers uniform against the New Jersey Devils on opening night has spent the rest of the year in Hershey. Some ferocious checking, this time applied by Mellanby. And it's Murphy in front of Mellanby and off his stick and controlled by Mihailovsky. 13:57 to go in the first period. A thundering ovation here at the Spectrum. 1-1.
You know, I mentioned earlier in this hockey game that the Soviets have a great counterattack. That's why the Flyers defense have to be very careful to be up on the play. But what happens when the Soviets break up the play at their blue line, they counterattack very quickly. If the gap is too small, their forwards will get behind the Flyers defensemen. If the Flyers gap is too big between their defensemen and their forwards, then they'll counter in that space and come at them with their speed. So gauging that gap for the defenseman, the Flyers defenseman, is going to be very important here.
Kostichkin is helmetless because of a check from Derek Smith. Peters slugs one along that went off of Doug Sullivan. Followed up by Acton. Has Smith up the wing and wants to get it to him and does, but that play is broken up by Gusarev at the line. So peeling off to bring this back up is Davidov. Fedorov with the first goal of the game. Brian Prop with the second from Eklund and Shifley. And we are 1-1. 9 wins for the NHL teams, 9 wins for the Soviet teams, and 1 tie. So it'll be 500 or broken one way or the other.
Really solid first-man pressure tonight. They're going to back off and really try and play a controlled game and force a turnover in the neutral zone. That's something they did very successfully in the playoffs last year against both Montreal and Washington.
Picking this one up is Stepanichev. Puck came loose, though, and is sent to the back for Chikrin, and his shot floated wide. Stepanichev able to roll that one behind, and it skipped away off the stick of Konstantinov, and back now for Chikrin. Dumps one, and Malakov will step to it. He's ever hit, and then he returns with a jab on Horacek, and this thing's getting rough a little bit now. Stepping ahead and moving on with it is Malemakov, and he peels off. We get a whistle and stoppage of play with 12:48 to go in the first, and the game tied at a goal apiece. Well, Bill, we knew we would see a lot of that front line. Bykov centering and Homutov on the right and Kamensky on the left, and they've dominated the playing time that the forwards have had thus far. Terry Kartner flips one that sails out of play.
We'll also see that unit on their power play as well, but the Soviet Union teams play in units of 5. There's Viktor Tikhonov on the left, and to his right, the greatest scorer in Soviet hockey history, Boris Mikhailov. He's the man in the middle, played on a famous line with Harlamov and Petrov, perhaps the greatest line ever to play for a Soviet Union team.
Andrei Popov was the other assistant coach that you saw there. Soviets and the Flyers in a 1-1 tie. 12:30 to go here in the first period. Red Army and the Flyers. And we'll be talking with Joe Watson live at the end of the first period for his thoughts on the game, as well as a flashback to 1976. Chikrin dumps one back off. Shifley is there. He's cross-bodied, and the puck came across now for Bekoff, but he couldn't control. Punched back out by Kartner and taken on by Horacek. Horacek jabbed once by Semyonov, and then the puck came to the corner, and Horacek tried to play again, but this time it is knocked free by Homutov. Jabbing for it is Shifley. Coming along is Sutter, but it's wrapped along the boards by Shiryaev, and then a shot kicked away by the defense. The backhander by Prop went wide. Oh, and a big hit behind Sutter and Kropchak. Stepping to this is Kamensky. Sutter right on him, gives him a couple of whacks. And Kamensky with a pass that is kicked right back by Homutov, and he'll circle and play. Meanwhile, the Flyers in the midst of a change, and they line up in a wall, 5 across, just outside the line that time. Pete Peters to control this. The first shot went by him, but the subsequent 3 have not. Low shot total in this game, 4 apiece, with 11 minutes and 20 seconds having been played in the first period. The puck comes on to Murray Barron. Barron leading the rush ahead. Looks for Shifley. Can't get it to him. And coming along to start it back is Bekoff. This is the dangerous unit out right now for the Soviets. Trying to get by is Petrov, though. And stepping to it is Pelle Eklund. Eklund ties up with his man. Biakin locks with Prop, and Biakin goes down, but it's Petrov to play it back out. Soviets make a change, and quickly they have out Fedorov, the man who scored the first goal, and he drives it back around. Pete Peters to stop it there. Sweeps it right back for Shifley, has a little trouble, dumps it off, and Fedorov unable to get it. Guzarov, who was tossed out of the game Sunday in Chicago for a stick major, number 5, was able to play that one back across. Game is played under NHL rules. If they're tied after 60, there'll be a 5-minute sudden death overtime. Here is Pelle Eklund bringing it on. Eklund hands to Murphy, and Murphy wants to get a shot away. Off Eklund, kicked right toward the net. Mihalovsky comes up with it in a stoppage of play. We pause now for a regional break. You're watching the NHL Soviet Super Series on Sports Channel.
Well, we were all set for Arthur Erbe to be in goal tonight. We were told this morning that he would be. He's played all of the games in this tour so far for the Red Army team, but not tonight. The young kid, he's only 20 years old. Mikhailovsky gets a start for the Soviet Red Army team.
Ahead, stepping in with this one. Good shot popped off of Peters and is swept aside by Berube. Chibirov let that one go, and it is Berube dumping it back off for Scott Mellenby. Looks ahead to Poulin, but that one is back checked away by Kostichkin. And Kostichkin just flings it back in. Pete Peters there to stop it. This one dumped back out. Malakhov to play it with 9:51 to go in the first period of this game. A 1-1 tie. Quebec with a 1-0 lead on Montreal in the first. Minnesota and Detroit are scoreless in the first period. 2 other games in the league later on. Hip check to the ice is Craig Berube. And the pass tucked right back to Kostichkin. Sets it on ahead. Nice little finesse back by Davidov. And trying to work his way in deep was Chibirov. Tried for Davidov, and Peters way out of his goal. Comes sliding across the ice. Hangs on, and Andy Van Hellemond waiting for it to put him back in play, which he does. Hoffman just dropped one back down, and there'll be an icing call coming up here. Clock stopped with 9:14 to go in the first. The Flyers and the Red Army are tied at 1.
You know, we mentioned that the Soviet Union teams play in units of 5, so when they go out there, they don't have to really look to see what defense pairing is out there. If you're a forward, you know who's going to be out there with you. See Pete Peters wandering here a little bit. But you can imagine how much puck control they have to have, Mike, just to be able to change in units of 5. I mean, National Hockey League teams struggle to get their trio off at the same time, their front line. But when you have to change all 5 at once, you got to know that these guys know what they're doing with the puck.
So do the guys operating the gates to get them open for everybody to come off.
Here they come.
Makarov, Krutov, Larionov, Fetisov, Kasatonov. That was the magnificent 5 that the Soviets had just 2 years ago, and all of them now are in the NHL. And you think in terms of rebuilding, Peters able to hold on. They poked it loose after the whistle and into the net, but it won't count. It was clear to us that Peters did not have it, but it was not clear to Andy Van Hellemond.
Well, that's for sure. Well, the Soviet team right now basically has their 4th line out there, and very often, and it's very similar in Soviet hockey, your 4th line guys are your defensive players. And I remember the last couple of Canada Cups and also Rendezvous 87, the Soviets had definite defensive 5-man units and definite offensive 5-man units. You'd have to think, though, that this fourth line, and they double up with a couple of defensemen from one of the regular units, more defensive than offensive.
Derek Smith shifts from defense to offense, flipped that one ahead that went right off Pat DePuzzo, the linesman, and Karam back for Kartner to toss out. Then on to Acton, but this one swung right back along by Meslemakov, and up the wing it comes to Stepanishev. Stepanishev had that one busted away, but now here's a shot by Chastain that went wide. Stepping forward is Sullivan, turned it along for Acton, again off the linesman Pat DePuzzo, and the fans giving him a smattering of the raspberries. Kartner able to step on with it, has Derek Smith. Moves with Acton. Smith with a backhander that went wide. Acton centered. Chychrun to drive, he scores! Jeff Chychrun has broken the tie.
Nobody near him at all, and I'll tell you why. When the Soviets tried to put their defensive act together in their own end, they sagged way back in and try to force a turnover very quickly. If it misfires, they leave themselves wide open. Watch all the Soviets go all the way back in. Look at them. There are 4 of them right there. Jeff Chychrun wide open to blast that one home. Man, did he catch all of that one. But that's what the Soviets will do. They will force as a 5-man unit, try for a quick turnover. If they don't get it and you're able to make a good pass, you can see the problems they have.
Well, Jeff Chychrun with 2 big goals to this year, one against Calgary and now one here against the Soviet Red Army. Arguably the 2 best existing teams in their countries. Off this face-off, the puck is turned all the way back down, and the Soviets try to play a bank pass off the corner. What a hit that time by Horacek on Hobutov. And now we get a whistle and stoppage of play, and Andy Van Hellemond will take off a flyer. The call will be elbowing, and Horacek will sit. So we'll get to see the Red Army power play swing into action in just a moment. Let's pause for a regional break. You're watching the NHL Soviet Super Series on Sports Channel.
Well, Big Tony Horacek is one of the few Flyers that has never faced a Soviet team before, and he introduced himself with a big elbow right there to Hobutov. The Soviet power play guys, we don't know that much about except that they are good. Talk about 2 things usually on the power play: puck movement and people movement, and the Soviet Union power plays do both of those things as well as, if not better than, any team in the world.
Sutter able to turn this back to Samuelson. Kartner and Poulin are out as well, and it's flipped all the way back down. The Soviets were 0 for 3 against Minnesota in their loss. The North Stars lost to the Soviets, and in the 6-0 victory over the Canucks, they had 1 power play goal and 4 opportunities. Statistics are not available from some of the other games. Puck turned to the back. Gusarov able to control, flip that one that was tipped back out, and Motkov had to turn it back for Gusarov, but it's dealt away by Keith Acton. Fans are really wired up here tonight. They seem stunned by the very first shot, as Pete Peters was. A bullet drive from Fedorov that went in, but they got back into it quickly, and so did the Flyers. Puck kept alive, and they've got a man right at the front of the net, Bykov. Now he has to take it behind from Kamensky. Bykov to the back. It is held by Gusarov. Fires! Oh, and that one went just wide. Now it's controlled casually along by Konstantinov. Worked along for Hobutov. Drops it behind. Samuelson there. Double team. Kamensky able to take it. To the back it comes to Konstantinov again. Work to Kamensky. Pass broken up by Samuelson. Stepping with it, though, is Bykov. Looks to the back to Konstantinov, but moves right in himself. Then drops it off. An interesting power play to watch, isn't it? Big drive. Save made by Peters. Rebound, and he's able to hold on. It's fascinating to watch. I wish I could tell you what they were trying to do, though.
Well, one thing that has changed in the Soviet power play over the years, Mike, is there was a time when they hardly ever shot from the point, so you could stay in a real compact box, wait for them to come low and try to work it from behind the net. Not any longer. They'll shoot from the point. Gusarov shot earlier in this power play, and number 13, Valery Kaminsky, winds up for this shot right here. Had a pretty good screen going with one of the Flyers in front of him, and he can really let it rip. But if you noticed how big the windup was on Valery Kaminsky, that's his problem. And the people that even travel with the Soviet team will tell you he's got the hardest shot on the team, but he has really one of the slowest releases on the team because he insists on touching the rafters with that windup. His stick comes way up over his head.
Puck sent off the glass, and then Malakhov really reefed by Derek Smith. And Smith is able to step away with it. Able to clear it back down. 22 seconds to go on the power play. 2-1, the Flyers ahead. Chychrun from Acton and Smith, the tie-breaking goal at 11:36. Prop has scored for the Flyers, and the first goal was by Fedorov. Shanked right back in again. Ron Sutter goes to get it. Soviets have made a change in their power play unit right now, and that's something that's rare for them. Normally they go with the same unit for all 2 minutes. It is worked along to Fedorov. Penalty time is up to Horacek. Big drive off the glove of Peter. Swatted away by Chychrun. And it's Horacek to play it for the Flyers. Yanks it away from Petrov and turned it back out, but it is controlled there by the Red Army, and they will just float one along, getting it to Biakin. 5:35 left in the first. Flyers have the lead 2-1. Biakin tried to rag his way through Prop and Murphy. No sail there, and it's dropped back down by Chychrun. There'll be an icing call coming up. The lumber to the rubber ski by Kravchuk. 5:25 to go in the first. The Flyers lead the Russians 2-1. We'd mentioned that it's often customary for the Red Army team to use everybody on the power play that they normally do and just keep them out there for the full shift. That's been a real adjustment for the teams that have come to the NHL. That drive by Prop is called back because of an offside. I remember Pat Quinn saying just last weekend in Vancouver, Larionov and Krutov, that's one of the hardest things that they had them to get to do was to come off the ice when the shift was up.
And not only is it new for them, but they resisted the change because they're guys that are either in their late 20s. Krutov's, I think, a year older than Larionov. He's 30. So it's tough for guys that have gotten used to it over a period of 10 or 12 years. But all of these players here have spoken to Krutov and Larionov. We talked to their TV people today and their interpreter, and I wanted to find out if Krutov and Larionov got together with this team, and they said, yeah, they sure did when they played in Vancouver. Both of those guys got together with them, as did Balderas in Minnesota, and the word from those guys is it's hard to play in the National Hockey League. They really wanted to impress upon a lot of these young guys that play for the Soviet Red Army team just how tough it is to make it on a night-to-night basis in the National Hockey League. It's mentally very difficult.
I remember Makarov was saying earlier that one of the misnomers about Soviet hockey is that you only play 30 or 40 games. Well, the regular league schedule is that, but if you're one of their better players, you might see 90 or 100 games a year, just like an NHLer would. There's a shot that went wide from Huffman, but boy, the difference is the travel and the intensity,
and
too.
It's not only that. What they do is they have short periods of time off, sometimes even longer periods. They'll take a couple of weeks and try and peak for a tournament. Then they'll go and play their 8 or 10 games, say, in a world tournament. So there are nice peaks and valleys for them during the season. It's not necessarily an 80-game schedule grind, you know, against the same teams all the time.
The daily schedule, I remember Larionov saying, was if you're in the Red Army, is that you're up and in formation at 8, then at 8:30 you start practice. You get noon hour for lunch, then you practice in the afternoon, then you go to a barracks. All of the guys live in the barracks, whether they're married or not, and between 9 and 10 o'clock, there are 20 guys there, and there's one telephone. You're allowed that 1 hour to call. The only time that you get home is after the Saturday night games in Moscow. You can go home, but you have to be back at 11 Sunday morning.
Hey, hot and cold running and 3 squares a day. What do you want?
Can't beat that for 11 months a year.
That's right.
Up with this one now and moving ahead with it is Sullivan. Big drive and a pad stop by Mihailovsky, and play is halted on an offside. 4:33 to go in the first. Up opposite Igor Maslenikov, and it is shot back in by Murray Barron. Left behind, and here's Gusarov with it. Dropping it back deep to Motkov. Dmitry Motkov has stepped into that time by Sullivan, and then Sullivan able to finesse one over to Keith Acton. Acton pivoting, dumps it back now to Barron. Shovels one, and that ricocheted on a cross now, and Derek Smith is locked up on it. Ahead, a breakaway opportunity. Stepanichev in, looks, shoots, he scores! Stepanichev has tied the game at 2 with 4:02 to go in this first period.
Boy, he was alone, Mike, by about 15 to 20 feet on his breakaway, too, in behind Murray Barron. I'll tell you what, once the Soviets smell that turnover coming, which is right now, Stepanovic just took off immediately. He had to get that far up ice in behind Murray Barron. Went to his backhand. I thought Pete Peters had him low, but Pete, even with the splits, couldn't get down there in time. Pretty nice move and a clear-cut breakaway all the way from center.
Stepanichev with his first goal of the tour in this, only his second game of the 5 that have been played. Dave Poulin tried to cut off That time Homutov who was moving with it. This is the best scoring line out right now as Kamensky goes in. Has it brushed away by Chychrun. Interesting to see whether the Flyers are any more cautious with the game having been tied again. Kamensky pivots. Fed one in front and Homutov checked off by Poulin. Able to fight it away and along now for Berube. Berube drops it back and Jeff Chychrun steps to it. And Chychrun with a pass that's cut off and finessed on to Kamensky. Valerie Kamensky's shot ricocheted off Chychrun, and stepping along is Mellanby trying to get there, but it is sent back by Homutov and rescued by Malakoff and sent right back in again. Around it comes and Scott Mellanby is there. Nice pass on out to Dave Poulin, moving with Berube. Right now it's a 3-on-3. The drop to Mellanby, shoots one, and that one deflected to the seats and a stoppage of play. 3:01 to go in this first period, and the Soviets have a tie situation now with the Flyers at 2-2 on Stepanachev's first.
Great knack and strength of being able to accelerate while they're turning. Most North Americans put it in cruise and actually start to rest and don't really pump their legs when they're turning. A couple do. Kuklinski always did. Messier does. Mike Gartner does.
Here's Petrov, given a good hit that time. And it is Ron Sutter working it back across for the carry-out. And the shovel by Huffman. Dumped back along, but able to play it this time and start it back up the wing is Petrov. Wrestled right out by Horacek, and Horacek's going to sit again. So the Soviets will get their second power play of the game with 2:33 to go in the first.
Well, the crowd here doesn't like it, but Oleg Petrov really got roughed up by Tony Horacek. He didn't even have his helmet off. He'd already had that blown off earlier, but Horacek got the stick on him and then smashed him into the boards. Holding was the call. I guess it could have been called a hook. But Tony Horacek, the only guy to spend any time in the penalty box so far in this game with his second minor.
Soviets are going to start this shift now with Kostichkin on the right and Chabirev as the center on the power play and Motkov on the left. So we're going to get a look at a different unit to begin it all this time. 2-2 tie, 2:33 to go in this first period. 8 Soviet Army players were picked up in last summer's draft by various teams. 4 of the 8 players who have been drafted have their rights owned by the Quebec Nordiques. And some good ones, too. Puck dump back off now. Davidov turning with it. Has a pass back along that went off of Prop as Gusarov was waiting for it, but pivoting now is Motkov. Soviets wheel back up ice again. Kostichkin flips one and then tries to control. Samuelson right there to wedge him off to the corner, and Poulin tries to lift it, but it is kept alive, and the power play can continue on the attack with Kostichkin up with it. Drops one back off. Davidov working it to the back, and Motkov to Davidov again. Shoots. Oh, he hit the post with a shot. And it sailed into the seats. Just that close from a Soviet lead.
Boy, I'll tell you, Davidov can really let her rip. He was drafted this past June by the Winnipeg Jets. And, you know, even from here, Mike, his stick looks like it's really got a big hook in it. There he is. He's got that blackened blade. And even from here, look at the hook he's got. He may be their most skilled all-around player, but when I talk to the people that travel with the Soviet team and ask them which of these players could play in the National Hockey League, he was not one of the ones that was mentioned. Homutov was mentioned. Kaminsky was mentioned. Oh, look at this. Watch this.
Yeah. I was just about to say Jacques Demers has called one of the sticks of the other Soviet team that was playing in Detroit recently. But this is the first time a Red Army stick has been called, and we were advised that one thing that Viktor Tikhonov wanted when this series first began the day after Christmas was one of those stick measuring devices to make sure that every stick he had was legal.
Well, Mike, one thing I could have told him not to do is not to put white tape dead center in the middle of a black stick like that. Now, is Andy Van Hellemond going to tell him that it's legal or not? He's got to be telling him that it's illegal. I hope Andy knows how to use that thing, because I can tell from here that it's illegal. But it looks worse even because the little bit of white tape is dead center of the curve.
Yeah, design-wise, he was asking for it.
You bet he was. I mean, we're a good mile and a half from the ice surface. There's Arthur Urbe, the backup goaltender, and he said, yeah, don't worry, I'll step on it. I'll soak it in the hydroculator and get some hot water on it, and it'll be fine. So Davidov, number 11, the guy with all the skills and a great... Look at him, look at him. You think that's funny?
You know what he's saying? What a country.
I guess. I just measured it the other day.
I'm sure Tikhonov is pretty Tikhonoved off about this, isn't he? Because he got the stick measuring device right when they started the series. He made quite a point of it. He said, I want to make sure every stick I've got's legal.
They obviously lost the instructions.
Well, a minute 9 to go on the minor to Horacek. And up on the board, a 2-minute minor to Davidov for an illegal stick. That's the first stick call Paul Holmgren has made all year. Picked a good time. Both teams will have 4 aside out. Jamie McVicker, our statistician here, has just scrawled a note saying that he's been watching the Soviet bench and he's noticed at least 3 players now on the Soviet team who have made a change in their stick while sitting at the bench. Interesting. What a pivoting move that time by Maslemakov. Then he wiped out nearly in the corner, got it back for a shot by Malakov, and a stick save to Peters. Turning with it is Sutter. Ron Sutter almost in some trouble there. Able to control, though, and hand back over to Karkner. Karkner taps back for Sutter. Flyers will have the power play in 44 seconds. We have a minute 15 to go in the first, and the game is tied at 2. Karkner shakes it across now, and Keith Acton comes in. Locked up by Malakov that time, and pivoting with it and starting it back is Konstantinov. But it is Shell Samuelson. Trickles one along for Sutter. Final minute of this period. Fresh from the bench now is Kerry Huffman. And the power play will begin for the Flyers in 20 seconds. It's their first man advantage of the game. It will carry into the second should they not score. Huffman with a pass on to Acton. Keith Acton pivoting away from Homutov checking. Tapped one along that is driven off by Bykov. And Bykov takes a pass back up from Shiryaev and then works back across to Homutov. He's got Bykov in front. Oh, and the pass went off Murphy. Or Bykov would have been alone on Peters, and then he sent one off the outside of the goal. Penalty time now up on the board for only the Soviets. The power play has begun, but it's Bykov wheeling right back in. Sets it up for Homutov. Got loose and shot one, and Peters made the save. And it is Eklund wheeling back out with 15 seconds to go. He's got Mellenby up the left wing. Eklund pivoting, still controlling, now brings it in, but both the wingers had to get back to be onside in the last 5 seconds of the period. A period that will end with the two teams as they were when it started, tied, both teams with a couple of goals. Fedorov at 2 minutes, Brian Propp at 5:22, Chychrun 11:36, and Stepanichev at 15:58. 11 shots, Soviet 6 Flyers, it's 2-2.
Their third guy high is Valery Kamensky, and we'll watch him come back. Here's the scouting report on Kamensky. Great offensively. Some nights he takes a day off defensively, and that's what he does here. We'll stop and show you that the Flyers have crossed the blue line. Pelle Eklund has the puck now, and all he's going to do is move in here and take a shot on Mikhailovsky right here. No problem here. The Soviets have a couple of defensemen to take that one Flyers forward, but watch Kamensky on Brian Propp. He has to turn and take Propp at one point, and I'll show you when he makes a feeble attempt at it. Eklund's shot on goal will stop and show you that Kamensky has turned to try and get the stick on Brian Propp, but that doesn't work at all. The tendency I wanted to show you, Soviet goaltenders go down on the first shot, don't get up very quickly. The rebound comes all the way out to Propp, and he moves by Kamensky. So a tendency by Kamensky not to check, and a tendency by the goaltender to go down on the first shot, and Brian Propp had a goal. All right, here are the Flyers attacking now. Terry Karkner with a nice pass to Derek Smith. We'll let them cross the blue line and show you what they tried. We'll stop now and show you that Derek Smith has tried a long pass into Keith Acton. It gets by him and goes behind the net. But I want to show you how the Soviets collapse and try for the turnover. Let's stop it right here. We'll count the Soviets. 1, 2, 3, 4, all back in deep. One way out here. I don't know what he's looking for, but you can see what Jeff Chychrun has to work with. An entire zone right here. Bingo. Smashed it home. So some tendencies that the Flyers were able to exploit that one. A defensive collapse deep into the zone. So 2 Flyers goals, also 2 Soviet goals. 2-2 at the end of the first. We'll be right back.
Period about to begin. 18 seconds of power play time up to the Flyers as we review quickly the first period. Fedorov, Prop, Chychrun, and Stepanichev were the goal scorers in the game at 2-2, and the shots were the Red Army 9 and the Flyers 6. Flyers power play heats up with Samuelson, Huffman to be the defense, Eklund up front, Scheifele on the right wing, and on the left wing, Brian Prop. So Paul Holmgren is seeing to it that Steve Scheifele's getting plenty of ice time here in his first NHL game. Eklund wheels back behind, turns one that is controlled and brought back up by Homutov. Right out of the box is Davidov, checked off though on the play by Eklund. And it is Scheifele this time shoving one too far. So we're just underway in the second period of this game with the Soviets and the Flyers tied at 2 goals apiece. Moving on with this is Kamensky. Checked on the play by Huffman. Checked again. Ridden to the boards hard by Huffman. Homutov able to work it behind. Now pivoting with it is Bykov. Slugs one that is knocked loose and brought back up by Scheifele again. Steve Scheifele eyed up that time. Puck dropped on back, and still the battle on with the defense. Shiryayev sparring for it, and he's able to guide it back out to Kamensky. Trying to pivot away from Pelle Eklund. Kamensky able to steer by him, but it is Scheifele once more, dropping it on back to Chychrun, then for Scheifele and down. There'll be an icing call as Shiryayev touches up. So back it'll come near Pete Peters. Peters faced 9 shots in that first period of play.
You know, Paul Holmgren said before this hockey game that it would be a very good test for his team away from the puck. That is an area that the Flyers feel they have let down in the last couple of games. And man, when you play the Soviets, that is a great test, because so often the playmaker is the guy without the puck. You end up focusing on the puck, and of all the teams in this universe, the Soviets play as well away from the puck offensively as anybody. So you really have to concentrate on your checks that are away from the play.
Would it be normal to expect the Flyers to try to force the Soviets to the boards?
Yeah, I think so.
Try to attack?
I think, you know, so many teams end up in awe kind of certain Soviet teams, and you can't do that.
Look at that! A second, a third, and a fourth shot by Poulin on the feed from Craig Berube, and getting every one of them was Mikhailovsky. Or this would be a 3-2 Flyers lead. Puck tipped away from Scott Mellanby, dumped along by Petrov, and he's wiped right out by the checking of Jeff Chychrun. Pivoting with this now is Karkner. Terry Karkner stepping back up ice. Hands it back on to Mellanby. Scott Mellanby has Berube the trailer. Slings one across, hoping for Poulin. Poulin centers, but that quickly swept aside. Murphy to keep it alive. Off of Poulin, picked up by Berube. The drop back for Poulin. Comes in and has to fight that time with Fedorov. To a side, continue the battle, and it's Berube. Sidled up to and held along the boards, this time by Kravchuk. Fedorov able to knock it loose, and then it's swept away by Mikhailovsky. Now trying to get to it is Poulin, but once more it's Kravchuk, and this time he's able to headman it on out. Davidov able to control this one. Eyed up by Jeff Chychrun. Davidov wants to finesse his way by Murphy, and does. Davidov hit hard on the play by Poulin. Still the Red Army team is able to keep it alive. Davidov peels, walks right in and fires, and it goes off of Peters. There'll be a penalty coming up. Sitting in the box soon will be Fedorov, and there may be more called too. But no, calm is restored. We'll be right back.
Well, number 18 of the Soviet Union's Red Army team, Sergei Fedorov, is off for a hooking. There it was right there. Gord Murphy made it look real good. This is Davidov coming right at us at the end when we froze that picture. He's got a new stick now. Remember in the first period, he went off for an illegal stick? Well, he fired that baby about 100 miles an hour. I don't think it matters what kind of stick he uses.
Puck floated back off by Murphy, taken by Huffman, works it on to Eklund, breezes right in, and then he's wedged off by Motkov at the last minute. Eklund still sparring with Kostichkin, Motkov coming in, locked up there with Ron Sutter. Then in comes Gusarov to tie up there. Eklund wants to turn away, and Gusarov won't let him. To a side, continue the battle, then Sutter had his stick held and responded with a hit on Motkov, but back out now come the Soviets, and Kostichkin moves in. Eyed up by Huffman. Good shot. Pad stop made by Peters. Huffman finesses it back over to Eklund. A minute 15 still to go on the Flyers power play. Here comes Brian Prop. Wants to get by but can't because of the checking of Konstantinov. It's rolled along, and Eklund is there. Ellie Eklund trying to turn from Davidov. Put it off Kostichkin. Davidov wants to get ahead with it, but it's poked back in by Huffman. And so Pete Peters will swing to Huffman. Right in some traffic, though. Turning with this one now is Stepanichev. He has one of the Soviet goals, but this time he's ridden off by Murphy. Back ahead comes Kelly Eklund. Hooked at by Stepanichev. Enough to throw the play offside, so a strong play there by the Soviet forward. 45 seconds to go on the power play. 16:05 left in the second and a 2-2 tie.
Well, this is the guy that took the penalty, Sergei Fedorov of the Soviet Union's Red Army team. He is the highest draft pick by an NHL team in the history of Soviets being drafted by National Hockey League teams, and he went 74th overall to Detroit. Year before last. 74th. He topped Alexander Mogilny by, what, 15, because Mogilny went 89th to Buffalo. But the day is going to come as Soviet players come over easier and easier year after year. The day will come that you'll see perhaps a first rounder, most definitely a second or third rounder in the next few years, perhaps.
I've got a feeling that by the end of the decade that we may see a European division in this league, or at least a way of playing off against some of the better teams in the world, too. This one is kicked around by Mellanby into the corner. Mellanby is ridden along, and that could stop the influx of players from the Soviet Union as well as from places like Sweden and Czechoslovakia, but those are big ifs. Dave Poulin trying to stagger loose. Poulin checked on the play by Konstantinov, and Poulin rides him down. Dave Poulin, who will be our guest at the end of the second period, standing over Konstantinov, and he's still trying to work it along and watching as Andy Van Helem, and he's blown the whistle. Will he signal a penalty? No, he's just going to rule that play was frozen. Penalty time is up on the call to Fedorov, and so the two teams are back at full strength with 15:20 to go in the second, and the game tied at 2.
I think Konstantinov wanted not only a stoppage of play, but I think he wanted who was playing Zorro on his back. I mean, Tony Horacek, when Dave Poulin ended up in this pile, started pushing people with his stick. There's Horacek right there going for the puck, but after the pileup continues, just watch Tony Horacek's stick on the right-hand side of your screen. There, one poke, see him go underneath. Then he actually, when Dave Poulin went down, comes over and pushes number 33 with his stick, but I don't think anybody got his number.
15:20 to go, second period of a 2-2 tie. Along with Bill Clement, Mike Emmerich from the Spectrum in Philadelphia, the Flyers and the Red Army, and we're glad that you've joined us tonight on Sports Channel. Just recently adding the Philadelphia area, and about 600,000 viewers, and more still to come. Puck turned around now, and Terry Karkner is after it to Acton. Steered one that is back-checked away by Homutov. But across now it is Kravchuk trying to work it on, but Derek Smith was in the way. Then Kravchuk just freight trained along by the booming check of Keith Acton, who then went on and stepped into Sheryayev. Chikrin flops one right back in, and Mihalovsky stops it and spins it back around for Doug Sullivan to get to. Then Acton tried to throw it in front, but Kravchuk able to knock that one around. And so help has to come from Bykov. The big gunners are out now. Bykov has Kamensky alongside, hands over to Homutov. And he moves it ahead for Kamensky. Checked on the play by Murray Barron, who's seen some limited duty tonight. Now Murphy is there, stepped into by Homutov. Murphy laid it back along for Derek Smith. But it is cut off by Motkov. Dmitry Motkov on the defense, just controlling back to his own line. This one is knocked down by Murphy. Wants to work it ahead to Derek Smith. Murphy still trying to kick it, but the Soviets just outmanned. And with 14 minutes to go in the second of this 2-2 tie, they just circle and wait. Bykov with a pass, and here's a breakaway. Homutov. Look, shoot, save made by Peters. Because of Peters' save on the Homutov breakaway, it is still 2-2.
Let's take a reverse angle look at this breakaway. Great pass from Chivarev up to Homutov. You know what he tried to do? He just tried to move to his left, hoping that Pete Peters would spread his legs and he could go into the 5-hole, but he really didn't give him enough move, and he hit Pete with it. Pete didn't go for it.
Oh, a shot by Biakin went wide. Malakov trying to float one along to Biakin, but instead it's brought back up by Huffman. Gary Huffman for the Flyers just blasts one that's off the glove of Mihalovsky. And to the corner they go to battle for it, and it is Scheifele having that one knocked away by Eklund and brought back up and worked on by Fedorov. Fedorov has Petrov breaking to the net. Circles the outside himself. Fedorov doing the spiral. Works to the back. Shovel shot by Malakov is blocked away by Eklund. Huffman guides it along to Shel Samuelson. 13:10 to go second period. Game tied at 2. Scheifele with a pass. Oh, and it handcuffed the breaking Brian Propp. Prop knocked down, that time by Fedorov, and the Soviets try to bring it back out. Samuelson punched it into Petrov, and coming by is Biakin. Leaned on by Terry Karkner. Scheifele still trying to play. Kicking it along, though, is Davidov. Close quarters action. Davidov again. Works it out in front. Fedorov tried to get a shot away, but that one was blocked aside. Now it is Scheifele once more. Dumps it back out. Pivoting with it is Ron Sutter. Lays it back across. There have been 2 minor penalties apiece. Neither team has scored on the power play in this game, but both teams have a pair. 2-2 the score with 12:25 to go in the second. Quebec over Montreal 2-0 in the second. Detroit leading Minnesota 3-0 in the second. 2 other NHL regular season games with later starts. Here is Karkner sliding it across. Horacek, last one. Oh, what a scorcher that was wide. Francois Lacombe, or rather Norman Lacombe, unable to come up with that one. Now back ahead come the Soviets, and a shot by Kostichkin is knocked down by Peters. Rebound, Davidov, a shot blocked away. Kostichkin again, to the point, Gusarov. Back over to Motkov, a shot, and that knocked down by Chikrin. Pretty good Soviet attack that time, and the Flyers clear. They hurry it back along, and then just that quickly they go deliberate. Gusarov lays it back off to Davidov. Pestered by Sutter, and Davidov will just skate it all the way back. Wheels and drops off to Gusarov. They've got a trailer back at the line, Stepanichev. They don't get it to him. Instead, Davidov moves in. Heels off. Lays a pass over to Gusarov. His shot blocked away by Peters and scooped up by Berube. Greg Berube wheels it back out. Good pass on the money to Mellanby. Tries to get by Motkov, but can't. Oh, and the 2 of them went heavily into the board. Poulin able to punch it away. Then along to Berube. Back for Dave Poulin. Finessed one to the front, knocked out by Mikolovsky, and then played by Poulin once more. Poulin given a jolt from behind, that time by Chabirev. They spar along the boards, and Berube comes by. Greg Berube, cross-body to the boards. 2 aside, continue to burrow right into the corner. Shostin wants to be the 5th man, hoping it'll come to him, but it's Berube out front. He scores!
What a great play by Craig Berube. Jammed against the boards with Dave Poulin. Both Soviets had them tied up. Chastain, number 23 of the Red Army team, came in, and as the puck popped out, Berube had to reach way behind the net to get it. And then what he did immediately was pull it out in front of the goal line far enough that he couldn't be poke-checked from Mikolovsky. Watch how far out he pulls it. Way out in front of the circle. Of the crease circle, and he also gave himself a good angle when he did that. So he really caught Mikolovsky off guard and made a great offensive move. Well, I wonder if that will count towards his 10-goal bet with the Trainers.
Well, let's see. There's one in L.A. that was wiped out.
That didn't count on the score sheet, but that the Trainers counted.
Then there was one other goal they didn't score on the road in St. Louis, and then he got this one. So as far as I'm concerned, that's 3.
You bet.
And still half a season to come up with 7 more. Do they count the warm-up? No, I guess not. Okay. Ahead with this now comes Stepanichev. Tries to center, but Huffman in the way. Craig Berube has just come up with a big goal to break the tie here. And as was the case with Joe Watson back in the last game played between these 2 teams 14 years ago. Oftentimes it is a player who doesn't score often who registers a big one. How big it will be, still 30 minutes of playing time to determine. Stepping ahead is Stepanichev, a backhander, and that trapped by Peters. Pete Peters just controls and then paddles it ahead for Derek Smith. Knocked away from him, so Huffman has to help out. 9:55 to go in the second. Flyers have the lead 3-2. We'll get the scoring on that. Berube with Poulin the only assist at 9:11. Malakoff back to play on defense, turns it back along to Kravchuk. And then Kamensky. Kamensky's out. That means that Bikov is out too, and he is. And also Homutov, who's breaking to the line, but Kamensky will carry. Turns by the defensive backhander. It's saved by Peters. Rebound off of Homutov, and then it's controlled by the Soviets. What a turn that time by Bikov, but he's forced back out by Prop. Boy, they sure have the fancy moves, don't they? Jeff Chikrin will go back to take this one for the Flyers. Flyers with the 3-2 lead in this game. 9 minutes and 15 seconds to go in the second. Scheifele's pass up the wing is knocked loose, followed up by Prop. Tries to get in front and is written down on the play by Kravchuk. Play continues, though, as battling for it is Eklund, but turning it back up is Homutov. Now controlled by Beekoff. Nice finesse move on Eklund. Beekoff moving in. Turns away from Chychrun. Takes some lumber from Scheifele. Kamensky with a nice poke check off his stick by Chychrun. Flyers can start at backup ice. Little pass on to Brian Propp. Shovels one in deep. Complete shift change for the Flyers. They bring out Murphy and Barron on defense. Horacek along with Lacombe and Sutter up front. Norman Lacombe recently gotten from the Edmonton Oilers, and here's Petrov in on a breakaway. He scores! Petrov has tied the game on what, by our count, is at least the fourth Soviet breakaway of the contest.
Well, the Soviets really have their invisible man game going now, and by that I mean their ability to get in behind the defense. That was strictly a kind of a double lateral cross in the neutral zone. One player went one way, Petrov went the other way, and you know, they start moving in so many directions that they really are difficult to pin down and to concentrate on. But you have to read when somebody is coming into your zone. In North American hockey and the National Hockey League, most often you end up in man-to-man situations in the neutral zone, not against these guys. You've got to play a zone, cut off your own lane, make sure that your lane and your zone are filled, and then just make sure you read who's coming into it. But the Soviets have gotten behind the Flyers very regularly in this period.
Booming check on Biakin that time by Murray Barron. And back up now comes Murphy. Just flies one wide. Kucherov back to get it. Hit by Horacek and also by Ron Sutter at the same time. But on with it come the Soviets, and weaving his way in is Fedorov. Tries to get by Murphy and Fan centered one, and Peters just tapped that one so that Sutter could get it. Good action in this contest. We hope you're enjoying it tonight on Sports Channel. A 3-3 tie with 7:40 to go in the second. Hoffman goes back. Taken to the wall, though, and help has to come from Murphy. Down the ice heavily went Davidov, and a giveaway. But the Flyers get it back just that quickly. It's kicked along by Konstantinov, but instead floated out by Horacek. Konstantinov goes back to get it. Soviets able to emerge. Kostichkin able to work to Davidov, then to Konstantinov. Flipped one trying to reach Kostichkin with it, but the Flyers are able to turn it back out, and Dave Poulin dumps it down deep. Malakhov back to get it, and Berube right near him, and Malakhov able to touch up for an icing. 7:08 to go in the second period. The score of the game 3-3. Let's pause for a regional break. You're watching the NHL Soviet Super Series on Sports Channel. What was that score? 3-3?
I think it's 3-3. You know, the Ron Sutter line isn't getting a lot of ice time tonight. It's sort of a rest period for Ron Sutter to a degree, but Dave Poulin's line has gotten a lot of ice time in the second period. Scott Millenby's on the right side. Craig Berube's on the left side, and with Berube scoring one, I got a feeling they're going to be out there at least every third time. We might even see this line on some power play.
Maslemakov on the face-off. Puck comes to the back and went underneath Kravchuk. Worked to head up the wing now for Poulin. Wanted to get it back to Mellanby, but Kravchuk buried him, and then a good hard hit this time by Shasteen. And Shasteen moves toward this one. Terry Kartner to get there first. Shasteen outfought him, though, and then Kartner came back heavily. They keep it alive, and stepping to the front is Maslemakov. Oh, and a pass broken up by Chychrun. Worked along for Berube, but the Soviets have it once more. Maslemakov had it stripped right off his stick by Poulin. Up the wing to Scott Mellanby, eyed up by Kravchuk. Mellanby pivots, takes a look, and finesses it to the back away from Murray Barron, and so the Flyers drop back. Shots on goal in this period for the Flyers 4, and for the Red Army 7. 6:20 to go in the second. Shots in the game 16-10, the Soviets. Murphy able to hand it along to Keith Acton. Acton smoked out by the forechecking of Shasteen, and then wipes out on the play. Still they battle for it, and Acton recovered along to Motkov, and he's hit hard by Sullivan. Acton once more will head back behind with 6 minutes even to go in this second period. Dumps it back off, but Motkov up with it. The big line is out again. Beekoff to play it. Has Homutov alongside, but this time will hand back to Gusarov. Well, these guys are used to seeing 30, 35 minutes of action a game, and they're sure getting it based on the first two periods tonight. Here's Sullivan with the drop to Acton. Acton taken hard to the boards and glass by Motkov. It's rolled off by Kamensky. Kept alive by Huffman for a shot that's knocked down. Played over to Derek Smith. Smith with a backhander, and it went wide as there was a screen moving right into the goaltender in front. Out with it now comes Gusarov. They've got a 4-on-3, but the pass for Kamensky knocked away by Samuelson. And Shel Samuelson turns away from the hook check of Kamensky, dropping one off that's kept alive by Bykov, but canceled again by the long reach of 6'6" Shel Samuelson. Up the wing now comes Derek Smith, taken to the boards hard by Konstantinov, and he'll just wedge one along to Gusarov with 5 minutes even to go in the second. Conclusion of the Soviet Super Series tonight on Sports Channel. 3-3 the score, the Flyers and the Red Army. There's one other game tonight, Moscow Dynamo going up against the Boston Bruins at the Boston Garden. The series is 9 wins for the NHL, 9 wins for the Soviets, and 1 tie. Pivoting with this is Brian Propp, scorer of the first goal in the game. Propp has a wedge from Eklund and an opening, drops a pass, but it's checked away from Scheifele, swung right back in by Chychrun again. Fans really talking it up with the Let's Go Flyers chant as the pass sailed through Petrov. Petrov is the man who tied it on a breakaway just a few moments ago at 3. Brian Propp feeds one across, and it's tipped away from Scheifele. And so the Soviets will regroup. Here is Petrov bringing it right back. Moving in, trying to get away from Scheifele, and does. Petrov centered, but it went off of Jeff Chychrun. Turning with this one now is Fedorov to Petrov, and the shot that went wide. Now it's flung back in front by Shuryaev, but just punted back along by Chychrun. They keep it alive. Kravchuk rolled it along the board. Stepping in, trying to get it is Fedorov. But it squirts right over to Chychrun, and Chychrun's pass is cut off quickly and turned back the other way, cut off Biakin and brought up by Chychrun. 3 minutes and 35 seconds to go. Davidov turning with it. Davidov drops it back, and Biakin comes ahead. Across on the wing for Fedorov. Controls, moves to the front, and shoots one wide. Biakin again, but instead it's Scheifele trickling one back. Again, the Soviets regroup, and it's Gusarov sent flying on a check from Tony Horacek. He's lost his stick, so he regathers one from the bench as you watch the play unfold near Karkner. Across with this now is McCall with a pass to Sutter. Moves in and shoots! And it's turned aside by Mikhailovsky. Right back up as the hitting picks up in this game. Soviets bring it back. Davidov can't reach this pass. It's Sutter having it knocked away, but turned back out again by Murray Barron. Sutter in flight, moving along with Norman Lakov in a shot. 6 saves, and then holding on is Mikhailovsky as players crash the net, and now an altercation behind. Ron Sutter and Motkov, and quickly it is stopped. We pause now for a regional break. You're watching the NHL Soviet Super Series on Sports Channel.
A couple of high sticking penalties to number 14, Ron Sutter of the Flyers, and number 32, Dmitry Motkov of the Red Army team. Mikhailovsky once again went down on the first shot, and he really had trouble controlling his rebound, was able to smother it, and behind him, the sticks were clashing. Sutter and Motkov.
Ron's brother, Rich, had a fighting major in this series with the Red Army. He and Fedorov went at it in the game in Vancouver that the Red Army won 6-0. That's been the only major penalty so far involving the Red Army in the series. In terms of fighting, I should say. They had majors in game misconduct the other night, one apiece in Chicago. Now they move it in, and they try for Chastain. Chastain wrapped up and just hauled to the corner by Shel Samuelson, and he's slow to get up. Chastain appears to be hurt as the puck worked along to Mellanby. Then crisply back out to Dave Poulin. Poulin controlling, tries to center, but it kicked away, and Mellanby kept play alive. Couldn't finesse by, though, and ahead comes Stepanichev. Stepanichev shakes it back to Mesmelikov. Then Stepanichev controlling, shoots one, and it's blocked away by Peters. Dumped along by Dave Poulin and gathered in by Chychrun in the last minute and 45 seconds of the second period of this game, and the score is tied at 3. And we have an icing call. Valery Shuryaev touching it up. We'll return to the Spectrum in Philadelphia in 30 seconds. There's a guy who was a mechanic in a bus depot during World War II at age 10. He went to school and worked full-time, as many youngsters did in the Soviet Union during the war. Soccer was the first passion of Viktor Tikhonov. Later he became a defenseman for Moscow Dynamo and then assistant coach of that team, and then he took over the most important role in Soviet hockey, coaching the national team.
And he's never been accused of being one of the boys, that's for sure. Every once in a while you'll see him give one of the players a cuff on the back of the head.
Puck turned along, and Smith with a shot. That one is blocked down. Chychrun just waits. Hammers one, and that knocked down by the defense. Shoveled back along, and here comes Kamensky. He's got Homutov and Beekoff with him. Kamensky crosses. Oh, a good wrist shot, blocked off by Pete Peters. Peters yielded on the first Soviet shot, but he's been pretty strong the rest of the way. And the same has been true for Maxim Mihailovsky at the other end. Centering pass went off the net, ricocheted behind Chychrun, but it's fed away for the carry back out by Doug Sullivan. In the final minute of the second period, Sullivan drops and Smith winds one around. Here is Axon pivoting. Looks to the front, but Smith is well tied up. And it is flung back on for Petrov to carry. Bringing it back up is Beekoff. Headman pass over to Petrov. Petrov shoots one, and it went wide. Partly steered wide by Gord Murphy. Just 12 shots for the Flyers and 20 for the Red Army. There'll be an icing call on this one as Gord Murphy is back to touch it up.
Well, this team after this hockey game tonight, who's he talking to? They have a couple of days off. They go to New York tomorrow, and then the next day travel to Toronto and then grab an Air Canada flight to Frankfurt and then get back home. Sometime on Friday, they've got the weekend off, and Monday night their regular league schedule cranks up again. They have 16 teams in their elite league. They play a round robin home and home to start the season, so they play 30 games. They've completed that segment. 10 teams then make the next round. They'll go again with the round robin situation, home and home. They each play 18 more games. And then the winner is based on points in both of the round robin rounds. So 48 games total in their regular season, and this is the split of the season right now. They're going home to resume the second phase of it.
How good is Red Army? They've won 18 of the last 20 national titles. The Yankees and the Montreal Canadiens and the Celtics and all of those great powerhouse teams in the North American continent couldn't even approximate that.
No, but they're going to have to go some this year. You know, their six youngest players aren't with them. They went to the World Junior Tournament in Helsinki. But right now, after their first segment of in their home league, this team ranks second. They're tied with Moscow Dynamo for second, and it's the Chemist team, the Chemist team, that's backed by the Association of Chemists, that is number one by 4 points right now. So this team, the Red Army team, isn't used to being second to anybody.
Well, the second is ended here at the Spectrum in Philadelphia. It was a tie at the end of first, 2-2, and it's a tie at the end of second, 3-3. Craig Berube at 9-11 from Poulin, Petrov from Fedorov, and Gusarov at 11:31. After 40 minutes, it's a 3-3 tie. We pause now for a regional break. You're watching the NHL Soviet Super Series on Sports Channel. They won a 3-3 tie. Of course, you've been brought up to date on Edmonton, Calgary, Montreal, Quebec. The shots 11-6 Soviets in the second. Those are some of the NHL rivalries, and I'm sure that there are big rivalries in that Soviet National League, too.
Yeah, there really are. Of course, with 16 teams, they're so spread out. Some of the teams, Mike, are literally thousands of miles apart. It's like Vancouver trying to have a rivalry with the Washington Caps. But there are two teams in Moscow. There are four in all. The two that have the biggest rivalry in the entire league, Spartak and the Soviet Red Army team. And the reason for the rivalry is that Spartak is the team of the people, and that the establishment team, I mean the ultimate establishment team, is the Soviet Red Army team. And the Spartak fans are generally younger. They have longer hair. They're the ones that like heavy metal music. I mean, it's really true. But the Spartak team has just been whomped for so many years that really the biggest problem in Soviet elite league hockey has been the absolute domination by the Soviet Red Army team. And that is something that hasn't happened this year. And I expect that their fan support is quite a bit better. It was a foregone conclusion for so many years that the Army was just going to beat everybody else up in the league.
So parity is starting to find its way into their league, too.
Sure.
They get, on the average game, the one that's not a key rivalry, they'll get 2,000 to 3,000 fans a game. And they even have question-answer sessions with the coaching staff at center ice. The fans submit questions during the game, and they've done this to try to help develop further interest on the part of fans. There are plenty of people in the Soviet Union who play the game, but not that many that like to pay the price of admission to watch. Andy Van Helleman ready to start play here in the third period. This game is deadlocked at 3. Hope you're enjoying the telecast tonight on Sports Channel. The Flyers and the Soviet Red Army. Puck controlled by Beekoff. Shovels over to Kamensky. Kamensky trickles one, and Beekoff around in front, and Peters knocked it away. Then another shot and a save by Peters, and he's able to grab it and hold on as Homutov was trying to poke it in from the side.
Boy, these guys have such good hands, this Bekoff line, but even more than that, Mike. You know, we talked about the units and how the Soviets play in units of 5. Well, these three forwards, Kaminsky on the right side, number 13, and there's Bekoff, number 19, Homutov, number 15. They played as a line together in both the Canada Cup in 1987 and Rendezvous 87. So they've been playing and practicing with one another for at least 3.5 years now. And we often talk about how National Hockey League coaches mix and match very often and mix their lines up. Boy, these guys know one another blindfolded.
Here is Shell Samuelson moving ahead with Prop. Samuelson just controlling it. Shovels to Prop, but it's off his stick behind. Prop to the back to Huffman. Shoots one, and it went just wide. Trying for the deflection was Scheifele. Now Prop tries to nudge it along, but it went off of Eklund. Brought back up by Kaminsky, who pivots back and lays it over to Malakoff. Malakoff's pass right on the money to Homutov. Handles over to Bekoff, but he collides after being checked by Prop. And it is Huffman knocking one around the wall. It comes to Scheifele. Then ahead for Pelle Eklund. Gee, it seems the lights are dimming here. Eklund locked up right at the Soviet boards, right in front of their bench. Runs along now by Biakin. What?
Didn't hear anybody yell last call, did you?
No. In goes Karkner. And Karkner and Biakin tie up. Trying to go along as Petrov, but he ran into plenty of trouble from Calahoo, Alberta, and Greg Berube. And it is jabbed right back out by Scheifele. Fresh from the bench picking this one up is Fedorov, but that one is deflected loose. Biakin can't handle, and so going back now is Shiryayev. Kravchuk with a pass that is tipped loose by Fedorov and gathered in by Karkner. Then that one by Dave Poulin back down for an icing call that will bring the face-off near Peters. Early goings, period number 3, both teams with 3 goals. Chibirev lining up for the face-off with Acton. And it is Murray Barron playing for the Flyers defense, right back off to Doug Sullivan. Followed up by Murphy. Check loose by Kostichkin. He's got a man in front. Davidov, he scores! Davidov has broken the tie. It's 4-3 Red Army. So maybe that will pay in portion for the illegal stick call that he got early.
Boy, what a play by Kostichkin, and did Davidov ever bury it. But Gord Murphy was put in a tough spot. Doug Sullivan gave him the puck when he really was in a tough area to try and handle it. Kostichkin, number 27, had to elevate this pass. Watch it. It'll come right up over Murray Barron's stick, but like so many Soviet passes, it will land flat right on Davidov's stick. Bingo. Right up over Pete Peters. That was a pretty goal. But once again, I point out that Gord Murphy was put in a tough spot. Here we go again.
Kostichkin with a shot, and Peters got his pad on that one. And then it is played by Samuelson. So the Flyers trail in the game. This one drilled back in by Samuelson. And around the glass, it ripples over for a toss by Derek Smith that's flipped loose. Then Sullivan tried to center, but it's headmanned on out to Kostichkin once more. Kostichkin prickles one through Murray Barron and then wrestles with him as you see Peters turn it along to Samuelson. Banks it back up the boards. Doug Sullivan starts it out to Acton, moving along with Derek Smith. Acton tries to turn by Gusarov, but is bumped off. Acton trying to center again, and Gusarov said no again. Cornette. Back up now comes the Red Army unit. Turning with it and bringing it in is Chibirev. Heads back behind the net and centered on the back of the goal. Murphy taking over there. Lays one out, but Ron Sutter just given a bump, and boy, did he ever jab his stick in the direction of Konstantinov several times. It is Malakoff controlling for the Red Army to Chibirev and back again to Malakoff. Just under 17 minutes to play here in the third period as the puck drilled out of play, and so again the clock stopped with 16:56 left in the third. Soviets 4-3. Raucous crowd here at the Spectrum in Philadelphia chanting "Let's go Flyers" for their home team that is trailing in the game 4-3. The Soviets scored first, the Flyers got 2 and were ahead 2-1. The Soviets tied. Flyers made it 3-2 and the Soviets tied again late in the second, and then it was Davidov breaking the tie here in the third from Kostichkin at 1:55. Puck frozen again. Well, this goaltender Mihalovsky has only had to face 13 shots, but he's been good.
He has been pretty good. What the Flyers, and we talked about this early, and we even did a telestrator segment on it, They know the Soviet goaltender's tendencies. Most of them go down on the first shot, and if you can get there for a rebound, you're in business. But the Soviets have done a really good job of even holding the Flyers off from the first shot, let alone anybody getting there for the rebound. No, Mihailovsky isn't even their starting goaltender in their regular league. Arthur Urbe, the smaller guy who has played all of the games in this series except this one, was picked up from Dinamo Riga as a replacement for the Red Army's #1 goalie who pulled a groin before this tour started.
Puck popped wide, going to get it as Shastin cleared, but Chychrun is there. Shoots! Oh, and it was deflected en route by Scheifele, but tipped away by Mihailovsky. Dumped along, and Kartner tries to kick it further, but it is trickled across the goal mouth and worked back out now for the carry by Stepanishev. He's one of the goal scorers in this game for the Soviets, but can't connect with Shastin. Instead, ahead with it comes Eklund. Eklund fires, he scores! You don't see the big slapper often from him, but you did that time, and it has tied the game.
Mike, he's going to have to dust that baby off. What a blast, but once again, and this time it burned him. Watch Mihailovsky, watch the goalie on the left of your screen. As soon as Pelle Eklund wound up for that shot, he went down and committed early, and now he's waving his arms and saying, well, I can't see it. Maybe one of the reasons he couldn't see it is he went down too quickly. That one went right by Gusarov's skates, #5, and right up over Mihailovsky. And Pelle Eklund has tied this game at 4, and there's a lot of hockey left. 16 minutes to go.
Well, the big line is back out again for the Soviets. Bykov over to Homutov. Couldn't get through Samuelson, then Mellanby goes down. Mellanby tests there with Bykov and emerges with it. Scott Mellanby for the Flyers flips one that clicked off Craig Berube. Gusarov goes back to get this one. 15 minutes and 35 seconds to go in the third. Forechecking by Mellanby nearly paid off, but it's Gusarov wheeling and stopping. Puts it on the turning stick of Bykov. Trickled a pass ahead, got some help from Kamensky, and then he was taken to the boards hard by Berube. Gusarov moving with it. Just a deafening roar and chant here at the Spectrum. Dynamo leading Boston 1-0 in the third at the Boston Garden. 4-4 is the score as Berube strides to that one, but it comes right back over to Kamensky. He's dangerous. Not that time as Samuelson took him out. Peters scoops it behind. Barron drops it off the boards. Berube stepped into. And an offside will now be whistled down. Will it go all the way? Yep, that's the signal. Back it'll come near the Soviet goalie when...
Reverse angle look at the goal that's tied this game. Watch Eklund get the blue line. Gusarov just backs off. Now, most times that would be a safe play against Eklund. You know what? That's the first time on all the replays we looked at that I saw Mihailovsky get a piece of that. It almost looked like it was going over the net and that he brought it down. But most times you're safe backing in on Eklund because he won't wind up and let her rip.
Oh, and a shot that time from Huffman knocked down by Mihailovsky. Fedorov able to finesse one, lays it back up the wing. Biakin to play it. Has a man breaking, but will carry on in himself, and then it's just poke checked away from Murphy. Boy, what an atmosphere. This is really emotion charged here at the Spectrum. It was rather calm earlier tonight, and by a long shot different than what we had heard in 1976. But they have regained some old form here. What a hit that time by Derek Smith. Turning with this is Huffman. Spins it back out off of Smith and shoveled back further by Sullivan. Stepping back for this now is Krevchuk. 14:09 to go in the third period. If you're just joining us, you still got here in time. This game is tied at 4-4. Jeff Chychrun unable to keep, and so Kartner is back. Terry Kartner takes a look up the wing. The pass tipped by Sutter. Moving ahead with it now is Lacombe, and Lacombe forced back behind the net. Norman Lacombe saw it worked up the boards. Kartner turned it back to Lacombe again. Dealt it off for Sutter. Ron Sutter centers. It went by Horacek and marched right back out by Davidov again. Sized up by Jeff Chychrun. Davidov finesses. Up the wing for Kostichkin. Chased off by Horacek, but Kostichkin tries to regain control. The battle continues in the corner. To a side and walking away with it. Davidov hooked down. Davidov ragging. Oh, and a couple of Flyers tried to get Davidov. Maybe they did. He's out flat, but Lacombe and Horacek also hit each other. Davidov is very slow to get up. Play continues now. We get the whistle blown by the linesman Pat DiPuzzo, and Davidov will be 10-2. We pause for a regional break. You're watching the NHL Soviet Super Series on Sports Channel.
Well, let's see if we can see what happens to Davidoff, number 11. Now, Jeff Chikrin has one part of the sandwich working, but he leaves him, and Horacek will come from the right. And Norm Lacombe right there, boom. Now, they caught Davidoff a little bit up high. He went down and stayed down for a long time. You can see him holding his hand and never went out to take care of him.
The wrap-up of the tour for the Soviets. A game that the Flyers hierarchy did not want to play. Most of the players didn't either, but they said it's a game, and so we're going to come and we're going to be prepared, and they have been. It's been entertaining all the way, especially here in the third. Boy, every trip to the net can be the one that'll turn this game around. It's tied at 4. Turnaround shot is blocked off. Samuelson advances to Prop, then up to Pelle Eklund. Eklund dumps one in. Scheifele goes right after it. Shoulders there with Motkov. Came up with it. Centered. And Prop unable to control. Then in close quarters to Scheifele. Locked up in the corner. Gets it back to Prop. Given a shove by Gusarov. And he's able to control for the Soviet defense. Nice pass ahead. Steered back up the wing. And moving on is Stepanichev. And then he was hit by Murray Barron. And a centering pass went across the goal mouth from Maslemakov. Here is Craig Berube, hit by Malakhov, trying to finesse his way through, and hip check down by Gusarov. Back up the wing, the Soviets change on the fly, and here comes Bykov again. Bykov just turns back out, gets some help from his defense, but the highest scoring line is out there once more with just over 12 minutes to go in the third period. Ahead now comes Kamensky as Berube tried to line up a man. Kamensky wants to fight his way through, and hanging on to it is Pete Peters.
Ooh.
Boy, if Berube would have gotten Bykov, it's
Crushing hits here in the third period, and this one by Murray Barron on number 34, Anatoly Stepanovich, was huge. Shook that glass all the way down. But we also got to look at how slippery Kamensky is, number 13. He tried to sneak in between the Flyers' defense, and he's got great speed, but he's also got some slipperiness, too. You know, he reminds me of Mario Lemieux. I mean, he's got a long stride. He's got very soft hands.
Well, Acton on the draw with Bykov to the back, Malakhov, and a shot that went off Kamensky and is taken by Sullivan. He lifts it along, trying to keep it as Konstantinov. And it is poked loose and carried out by Doug Sullivan. He has Derek Smith moving nearby, and then they nearly collide, and the play breaks down. Oh, nice finesse move by Homutov, working up the wing now to Kamensky. They crisscross. The drop for Homutov, cut off by Smith. Gets it back from Sullivan in a 2-on-2 with Keith Acton. Derek Smith moves in and fires one that's blocked out. And then it's forced away by Bykov. Turned back on for Kamensky. And Biakin drops for Kamensky, and then it's carried on in. Oh, and a shot that went wide off of Shiryaev. And behind the net, it's locked up against the back and then eventually played by Kartner. Cut off by Kamensky. Kamensky controlling. Beats the slot. Oh, a big save by Peters on Fedorov that time. It is Kamensky again. Rustled off by Acton. Drops a pass, and Chikrin is there. Quickly on him is Fedorov. Kept alive by Kravchuk. To the slot it goes. Pivoting, trying to control is Briakin, and then it is cut off and worked back up to Derek Smith. So down it goes, and the Flyers change. They have Ron Sutter out. They bring Lacombe out on his right, and a steal by Sutter. Feeds over for Lacombe to Horacek. Oh, and it was poked away by the defense. And back up come the Soviets with it. A pass ahead for Gusarov. Tried for Biakin, but instead gets Murray Barron. Boy, Barron has been a thundering presence in this game, too, hasn't he? Horacek's pass, oh, and it came right on the money. It's kept alive by Fedorov, then over for a shot by Petrov that went wide. Fedorov once more works to the back to Motkov. Flips one in front, and Biakin couldn't cash in. Oh, and what a hit on him. Score by Gusarov after a plastering hit by Tony Horacek. Gusarov has broken the tie with 10:06 to go in the third. It is now 5-4, the Red Army.
I thought the Flyers were going to be able to get out of trouble. But when Tony Horacek just left his man Petrov against the boards, that left Gusarov wide open to blast this one by Pete Peters. I thought he had it, though. It looked like an unscreened kind of shot. That one by Biakin just slipped by, and then Biakin got leveled, but Gusarov just ripped one by Pete Peters. If I was going to measure another stick, you know whose I'd measure? Gusarov, number 5. From here, it looks pretty big to me, too.
Well, the Flyers will have to fight their way back into this one. We'll mention again, this is being played under NHL rules, so they will play a 5-minute sudden death period, but the Flyers are trailing in this one by 1 with just under 10 minutes to play in the third period. Boy, it's just been a thrill a minute here tonight. Puck controlled by Eklund. Checked off, though, and fought to the corner by Konstantinov. Still along the boards, two-a-side battle. Scheifele trying to pull it away. Number 38 for the Flyers. Eklund in there, too. Eklund got a little bit of room. Flipped it along, hoping for Scheifele, but instead, it is tended behind. Popped up by Brian Propp. Malakoff able to turn it along, but still some difficulty for the Soviets to get up ice with it. It is Chabirev working a pass ahead. Carried back in by Kostichkin. Shovels one in front, but Murphy up with that one. Murphy has a man up the wing. It is Eklund, but he'll carry along himself. Murphy can't finesse through the defense, and help comes from Mihalovsky. Just sets it up now by Shuryayev. And Shuryaev's pass goes all the way by Davidov and down. Partner gets there first. Icing the call. Clock frozen, 8:51 to go in the third. It's the Red Army 5 and the Flyers 4. We pause now for a regional break. You're watching the NHL Soviet Super Series on Sports Channel. Every draw a big one at this point. Dave Poulin takes it for the Flyers, but the face-off is won by the Soviets, and Shastin is able to connect back up with Stepanishев, and then it is rolled back in by Shuryayev. Pete Peters behind, along to Chikrin, dumps it back off, controlled by Kravchuk. Turned along for the pass by Shuryayev, and trying to step his way through with Shastin. But offside is called against the Soviets. You know, we've had some icings tonight, but very few offsides in this game.
You know, until 1988, the most Soviets ever drafted in one National Hockey League draft year was 5. That was in 1983, and the big names win in 83. Fetisov, Makarov, Kasatonov, and Tretiak. Then in 1988, 11 Soviets were drafted, and last year 18 overall were drafted. And I think there's kind of an irony in the sense that the first Soviet ever drafted by a National Hockey League team was drafted by the Philadelphia Flyers in 1975, and it took 3 years before the next one was drafted. His name was Viktor Hatulev, and he was drafted out of their Division I league, not their elite league.
Puck shoveled high, and it flops on back. In 1975, and that was after all of the flare-up, but before some of it that followed with the Soviet Red Army and Flyers game in 76, but after a very emotional Team Canada-Soviet series in 72. All the way back it'll come near Mihalovsky again with 7:55 to go in the third. What do you think that we've learned over the period of time from the Soviets?
Boy, well, I know for a fact that we've learned from one another. We have learned things such as the weave coming through the neutral zone. We've also learned of the importance of defensive play in the neutral zone. It was given the name neutral zone because nothing was ever done in it except skated through. Well, not any longer. You see teams like the Flyers pull back from their forechecking and forecheck in the neutral zone and things of that nature there. So we also learn how to play as a unit at times, too, defensively, especially defensively, so that teams can't spread your defense out. And when you move as a unit, as a 5-man unit defensively, boy, you're tough to get anything done against.
Beekhoff on, there was a pass on through, and Homotov left it behind. Samuelson able to slow it for Sullivan. Oh, and then a giveaway. Turning with it now is Homotov, given a good hit in the corner by Murray Barron. Circling is Kamensky, and it's Beekhoff. Locked up by Murray Barron and just wrestled to the boards and glass. 7.5 minutes to go in the third, and the Soviet Red Army team leading the Flyers here 5-4. There have been no leads by 2 goals. Every lead has been by just 1. That's the type of contest we've seen. Flyers with 16 shots, the Soviets with twice that number. They outshot the Flyers 9-6 and 11-6 in the prior 2 periods. Petrov couldn't get that one. And it is Huffman. Biakin right after him, and a pass cut off by Malakoff. Feeds it ahead for Petrov, but Samuelson just outreached him. Konstantinov heads back to play it for the Soviets across to Malakoff. Shift change on has brought out Norman Lacombe to work on the wing. It is dumped back in deep, and going for it now is Murphy. And Horacek, who's really been throwing his weight around, sometimes to excess and sometimes to a fault tonight. Just threw a check now. Down to the ice went Acton. There'll be a Soviet penalty coming up. They touch, and the Flyers will go on a power play with the key point in the game, perhaps, coming right up. 6:27 to go in the third. It's the Soviets angered, but leading 5-4.
Well, the Flyers have a chance here to climb back in. Top of your screen, Keith Acton is hooked down by Sergei Fedorov, number 18. And you know what Fedorov was arguing as he went to the penalty box? He was saying, my stick was held, and that's exactly what did happen, but Van Hellemond didn't see it. A bonus for the Flyers. This is the second time Fedorov has been penalized in this hockey game. He's their best penalty killer, so he gets to sit while the Flyers attack a penalty-killing unit that is still pretty strong, but without their top penalty-killing forward.
Flyers use Sutter, Prop, Eklund, Huffman, and Murphy. Murphy has moved up as the fourth man for this faceoff. Off the tie-up, it is Shuryayev firing it around the boards. They work with Davidoff up front. Also there is Kostichkin, and in back Shuryayev and Kravchuk. Kravchuk sees that one poked through him by Eklund. Coming across, though, is Shuryayev, and it is cut off by Prop and laid back to Huffman. 6:05 to go in the third. Flyers with a power play opportunity here. They trail by one. Scrapping for that one, and coming up with it is Ron Sutter, taken to the corner by Shuryayev, able to punch it behind a Prop. Prop given a good hit there by Kravchuk. Prop still working along the board. Shuryayev is there. Kostichkin has trouble. And it is Prop then to Eklund, to the point to Huffman. Huffman flips one that squids loose off of Kravchuk, and he's able to lift it high and back down. You know, the Soviets, when they're killing penalties, especially this team, they don't do anything fancy at all. They make sure they get it down every time. A lot of NHL teams will look for that pass and try for an offensive break. Very seldom will you see this team do that. Very seldom will you see them hit a pad or a stick or anything when they're trying to dump it out. Usually it's clean all the way down. 5 minutes and 20 seconds to go in the third. Power play time is down now to 50 seconds. And it is broken by Samuelson's pass on to Mellanby, moving with Horacek and Dave Poulin. Mellanby has Poulin headed to the net. The pass to Samuelson. Moves right in a backhander. On, it's fought off. Behind the net, up with it is Mellanby. Samuelson slides back to the point. He had the big play on his stick, and he got a good shot away. That was blocked off by the goaltender, and then Kartner, a shot saved. Rebound, and it is cleared but not out. Samuelson winds up and shoots. Deflected in front. Picked off by Horacek. Back to Samuelson. Drive, and that one kicked loose in front. Peacock got his skate on that one. Samuelson a shot. Blocked by the defense. Rebound. Poulin a backhander. Knocked down by Gusarov, and trying to trap it, and able to hold on is Mihailovsky. Oh, and Mellanby going right after Motkov. They fired, and they fired, and they fired. And Mihailovsky did not have that many get all the way through to him.
I'll tell you who blocked a couple of good ones, too, is number 19, Little Beekop. He did a great job, but he got caught in deep. That's why he had to go down and block. But I thought Big Shell Samuelson's arms were going to fall off from fatigue. Here's a chance for Samuelson. You know, he could have gone to his forehand here, but he stayed on the backhand. He had a whole bunch of room to go to his forehand, but didn't see it. He made it back to his point position and ended up taking 3 big blasts in succession from the point, only one of which got through. Here's Tony Horacek in front. Big 5, Gusarov is trying to hold him off. Terry Kartner had a chance. Moved in, tried to go high to the glove. That time, Mikhailovsky stood up, and if he hadn't stood up, he would have gotten burned. Here's Big Sammy's blast from the point. There's Beekop out in front, blocking.
Boy, that's a good look at all that play in front. And Islanders, 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific, Saturday, only on Sports Channel. May not be available in all areas. Check your listing for further details. And a timeout apparently being called here with 4:38 to go in the third. From the roar of the spectrum, a discussion. Soviets ahead 5-4. Again, Horacek got a cross-checking penalty, and the Soviets have begun what is their third power play of the game. Neither team has connected on the man advantage. Clock, the enemy of the Flyers right now. It shows 4 minutes and 10 seconds to go in the third. Soviets have the lead at 5-4. Davidoff left it behind, tries to regather, but it is long for Fedorov, and then on a cross for Konstantinov. Blocked loose by Samuelson. Flung back down by Dave Poulin. Shift change on for the Flyers. Acton and Eklund come out. So does Chikrin. So also does Murphy. Soviets wheel back up on the power play. It's dealt back in by Biakin. Set up by Peters. Turned loose by Murphy. And all the way down it goes. Now at the points, they're using Shiryaev and Kravchuk, the same two that they had in a penalty-killing role earlier. Petrov is out now, along with Fedorov. The puck carrier is Biakin. Feeds it on a cross, and the shot back around goes by Kravchuk. Kicking it loose is Petrov, but it's taken by Murphy. Petrov right on him. Trying to jam it loose is Fedorov. Still the puck loose, and Petrov tries to jam it to the front of the net, but it's Murphy tying it up in the back. Now they're able to work it to the point. Shiryaev fires one, stick save Peters as he stood tall there. Kept alive by Fedorov. On back for a shot by Shiryaev. Pad stop Peters, and he'll hang on. 23 seconds still to kill for the Flyers, and the scoreboard clock shows 3:01 left in the third.
You know, I wonder if Viktor Tikhonov is keeping his top unit off of this power play because they're not as good defensively. Looks like he might come out with them now. Maybe not. Homutov is out there. Yeah, he's got his number one unit out there, but he has used 3 different units on this power play. Here's the last big shot that came from Shiryaev right in on Pete Peters. Good block out there by Jeff Chikrin. Davidov was trying to get in front. Boy, Davidov has a bunch of speed and a whole bunch of skill.
Well, Ron Sutter says they get pretty big at this point. He'll have another important one to take. Maybe the very last one on this short-handed situation for the Flyers. 20 seconds they have to kill off yet, as it is Gusarov flipping for Homutov, but instead he winds up with Kartner. Terry Kartner's pass, gloved down by Poulin. Plays one ahead, and that one trickled loose, and coming way out of his net to dive on top is Mihailovsky, and there'll be a face-off near him with just 8 seconds to go, so that virtually takes care of the rest of the Soviet power play.
You know, I mentioned that this hockey team will be spending a day in New York tomorrow and then flying home the next day, Thursday, including Mihailovsky. But the guy that's backing him up tonight, Arthur Urbe, is leaving tomorrow. Pretty good reason, too. He's getting married on Friday. So he's jumping the gun by about 24 hours. So while his goaltending mate Mihailovsky is spending a day in New York, he's going to be going back to get ready for the big day on Friday.
2:40 to go, and on that matrimonial note, the Red Army reaches center ice, drops it off, but ahead with it now is Chabirev, unable to fight his way by Kartner. Flipped out and gloved along by Ron Sutter. Smith trying to get to it, but it's tapped off. The teams are back at full strength now. 2:25 to go in the third, and the Red Army leading the Flyers 5-4. Here's Mellanby moving in to Sutter, a shot, and that one clawed off as it went by Mihailovsky. Rolled back around to Mellanby. Tries to get to the front. Oh, and he had Smith breaking in there. And it's lifted right back out by Homutov, and to get it is Samuelson. Kjell Samuelson pivoting behind his net as Kartner went down at center ice, and the fans were complaining. Meanwhile, the Flyers are able to bring it back up in the person of Mellanby, along with Eklund and Smith. That's the line, but the Soviets just break it down at their line. 1:50 to go in the third. Puck rattled back around the boards, and it's controlled by Malakhov for the Soviet defense. They have Kostichkin out there now. He's one of their better defensive players. Takes a whack from Murphy, but tries to get ahead. Kostichkin moving in. He's got Davidov, but the pass came right to Huffman. Checked down, though, by Davidov. Davidov defended by Brian Propp. Nice strip of the puck from him, but the Soviets keep it alive. Then a shot is blocked down from the point as Chabirev let that one go, but it's Murphy bringing it back. Pass back checked away by Davidov, and he'll head back with 1:20 to go. Davidov trying to worm his way around, and now just carries back out to neutral ice. Good puck carrying show by Evgeny Davidov with 1:10 to go. And the Soviets playing a little keep away here. It is Fedorov turning at the line. Rolling it back across to Kostichkin. That one tipped loose from Petrov, hooked up by Murphy. They want to get Peters off. 54 seconds to go in the third period. The Flyers have to have one to force overtime. Can they do it? Huffman controlling. Has Mellanby in the glide near side, but will just control now and try to wind his way out. Flips one for Eklund, but that went by him. Shift change on. Barron and Samuelson come out for the last run at it. Poulin and Berube and Ron Sutter are out as well. Half a minute to go. They've not gotten Peters off yet. Puck dropped around, and Peters able to stop it. Shovels one up the boards, and Kamensky cut it off. Valerie Kamensky stripped of the puck by Poulin. Tries to start it ahead, but can't. Now Berube on to Sutter. Here comes Peters to the bench. Sutter has it fought off his stick by Beekoff. Oh, and then a hit on Beekoff by Dave Poulin. Puck flipped away, and Kartner has it 10 seconds to go. Terry Kartner has to rag it to keep play alive, and then it's forced off by Beekoff. Beekoff brushes one that goes back down, and the Red Army team is going to win this one. The horn sounds, and the tour for Red Army is over. They lost the first game. Good Winnipeg 4-1, but they won the next 4 straight, including the last one, and the most exciting and the closest one of all, here tonight from the Flyers by a score of 5-4. And there's a guy who doesn't play that often, but he came up in a big role for the Soviets tonight.
No, Maxim Mikhailovsky was a guy we didn't know much about. The tendencies were evident. He went down on the first shot. The Flyers had trouble getting to a lot of the second shots. And he was able to make some big saves when he had to.
The final score in the game. The Soviet Red Army 5, the Flyers 4. We now pause for a regional break.